Let's change the caliper. I'll show you guys why. This is the back tire. You can see it spins pretty easy. This front tire does not. Oh. As you can see, nobody's in the truck. So let's go ahead and take the wheel off, raise it up. I'll show you guys what to do. My lug nuts take a really long socket because they're the spiked ones, but I got it on my 1/2-inch impact gun, and we're gonna go ahead and take them off. Now I gotta take this heavy wheel off. I think I weighed it one time, it was like 90 pounds. These are 35 by 1350 by 26s. Got that off there. Now let's raise it up. First thing I have to do is disconnect my wheel light. I'm just gonna take these 3 nuts off, and then unplug it and put it off to the side. This wheel has no flex to it, so I just kind of pull up on it, get it out of the hole, and it's ready to come off. Normally, these have rubber plugs that go there and there, and they're 10mm Allen. You can take that off, which separates the caliper from the bracket, but you don't have to necessarily do that. What I do is just grab a 21mm, take that one and that one off, and it takes it all off as one assembly. Your pads, bracket, and caliper all come off. First thing I want to do though is take a pry bar, put it down in here, grab a hold of the rotor, and try to pry it. But it's not going to happen because it's locked up. So it might be kind of fun to get off. Okay, got those off. The whole thing's loose now. So now, since mine is locked up, I'm going to take a pry bar and pry the caliper off the rotor. Now another possibility this problem could be is your brake hose. If it's collapsed somewhere, which allows no flow to go through, it won't allow it to return. But mine has ripped boots on the pistons, so I imagine they're probably rusty. I could be wrong, but it probably needs replaced anyway. So I got that loose. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to put it up on top of the control arm up here, because I don't want to let it hang from the brake hose, because that could also make the brake hose go bad. So I'm going to throw it up here. Okay, put a little something like that. As you can see, it's not hanging from the brake hose, so a little play to it. That's simple. That 10mm on an impact gun. That separates the caliper from the bracket. I don't think I can do this with one hand, but I'm going to go ahead and get the bracket started. I'll just hold it up on the rotor like that, and then start the top bolt, and then start the bottom bolt, obviously. It's not a bad idea to put some Loctite on these bolts. I have seen these come out, or they weren't put in one of the two, but either way, I had a bolt missing at one time. You can kind of see there's some yellow on there. They had yellow on there from the factory. I'm just gonna throw some blue on it because, well, that's all I got. All it takes is a little line. I'll tighten it with my impact gun. This impact gun's pretty cool. It's got, I don't know if you can see that circle where the light is, but that's the auto mode. And if you pay attention to my finger, I will not let go of the trigger, but it's supposed to stop at 100 foot-pounds. Oh. I'm gonna loosen it back up. Let's try this again. I don't know if I can do this one hand. Alright, it's loose now. Let's try this one more time. You see how it stopped? My finger didn't move. Now if I do it again, it goes to like 150. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten the top one up, and then I'm gonna grab a wrench and verify that these are tight. You can torque them if you wanted, but I just make them as tight as I can. I got those two bolts tight. I went ahead and took the pads out of the old caliper. Now I'm going to put these clips, I guess you call them, in the new bracket. They go where the pads touch, there, and then same on the back side. So I'm gonna go ahead and put those on, throw the pads in, and then I'll get back with you. I figure I'd show you guys how these clips go because they're kind of weird. There's a little finger that sticks off of them, and they go in these little slots. And this one goes behind the bracket. And I also put some grease on there, some brake grease. This way the pads move freely. If those get rusted in there, that'll also cause your brake to lock up. So that's just one more thing it could be rather than a caliper. I laid the brake grease right beside the new caliper. That's what I use. So while it's out, I'm gonna go ahead and add a little grease to these because there's some on there, but not much. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more. Now this may not have to be brake grease. It could probably be normal grease as long as it says high temp. But I figured brake grease is probably the best. There's a temperature range, so it goes up to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So make sure if you get grease it's something like that because brakes do get really hot. Now I'm going to go ahead and install the caliper. Now I'm going to go ahead and take these greasy bolts back out because, well, they're in the way. Or might be able to push them up out of the way like that. It's really hard to do with one hand. I'm going to go ahead and tighten these bolts up and put the plugs back in. So I got thinking, my old one don't move. It should slide back and forth on them pins. With them rubber plugs missing, I imagine my pins are probably rusty. I mean, my pistons could be froze up too, but definitely the pins are one issue. That's probably why I couldn't collapse it too. So I could really just use some heat, get those out, clean them up, but probably better just replace it. I got those tight. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw these plugs in. There's a little groove that they sit in up in there. So make sure they're all the way in because obviously they're important. It should sit flat and kind of hold some air pressure because that's where the grease is sealed in at. So now the plan is, I got the caliper flipped upside down. The hose is still on it. I'm going to try to collapse the pistons, press them back in. I'm using my scraper, the handle of it, because I don't have a brake pad to throw in there, and it's kind of a big caliper. So we're going to try to do this one-handed. We'll see if it gets pressed in. Okay, I can't do this one-handed. It is not going back in. So either A, the brake hose is not allowing the fluid to get back through, or B, the pistons are froze up also, along with the pins for the bracket. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to take this plug out. That's where your new bolt goes for your brake hose. And the rubber plug is out. And the new caliper came with a bolt. So the bolt goes in there. But before you do that, I'm holding it there so this way it's not in my hand. But you put a washer, one of these copper washers that come with it, on, then you slide it through the block of the brake hose right there, and then you put the other crush washer on the back side of it. These are called crush washers. They're brass, so they're soft. When you tighten it down, they crush, so they act kind of like a gasket. So it's important you replace these and not lose them like I just dropped. It's important you replace them, and it's important that you have them. So we're going to go ahead and throw this on. So I didn't account for all the brake fluid that was going to dump out. It kind of made a mess everywhere. Dumped out pretty quick. Make sure you clean all that up because it does eat paint and stuff. So make everything rust faster. So make sure you spray it down with something. Preferably like brake cleaner or something. But I got the new bowl in there, snugged it up. You see the new crush washers. I had to hold the backside crush washer because it was crushed around the threads of the bolt, so I had to unthread it basically. When you're tightening this up, or when you put this on, you see it's kind of square as block. That's so you have it in one direction. And make sure it looks right. Pay attention to the old one. Because if it sticks out like this, obviously it's going to hit everything. And make sure your hose is not twisted. It needs to be a straight run. Most of them have a white line on them, so you can see if it goes around or up and down. This one, I probably painted over at one point. I tried this with it off the truck, and the pistons go in. So either A, I was caught on something else, maybe the plate of the tool was catching on something, I don't know. Or B, I have a bad brake hose, or possibly something further up the line. But I do know the pins were froze. I've had trouble with these before. So hopefully the brake hose ain't bad. Now I'm going to do is loosen the bleeder up and do something called gravity bleeding. What that is so your brake system does not like air in it, because then your pedal feels squishy. Brake fluid does not compress, air does, you know, like air compressor. So when you push the pedal down, you're compressing all the air, it makes it squishy, and your brake pedal don't feel very good. So I start by gravity bleeding, which is basically just loosening the bleeder up until it starts dripping, because this is lower than the fluid up there, and it should start dripping out. Then you tighten the bleeder up, and then it allows you to bleed it a lot faster with somebody pumping it and then cracking the bleeder open. Then after that is done, I'm going to pry on this and see if I can get these pistons to go in. If I cannot, then that means it's something else. If I'm able to, then that means problem fixed. So again, it's going to be hard to do one-handed. You kind of get the idea. Figured I'd show you, but you can see the fluid's coming out. So I don't think it's the brake hose. It's got a nice steady drip. So that's when you tighten it up. But first, I'm going to go ahead and tighten up this bolt. I want to torque it because of the crush washers. It's 30 foot-pounds is what I read online. Then get your 10 millimeter for your bleeder. Go ahead and tighten it up. Like that. Now if you're by yourself, there's a couple options. If you don't have the money, you can get a hose, run it from here into a bottle of brake fluid. So when you pump it, the air goes into the bottle and then escapes the bottle. And then when you let go of the pedal, it should suck in fluid. That's one way of bleeding it. The second way, you can go buy the tool, which is basically just, it creates a suction on here and it sucks out the brake fluid. And the third option, if you have somebody, they can pump the brakes, I don't know, 5 times, hold the pedal, you'll crack it open, it'll shoot out the fluid and the air. Do that a couple times until you see nothing but fluid come out. When you gravity bleed like this, there shouldn't be much air at all, because if you think about it, this is the highest point of the caliper, so that means all this got filled up. There shouldn't be any air in it. But you always want to make sure, because bad brakes is not good, especially on a heavy truck like this. So I had my wife come out, pump the brakes, I bled them, I cleaned everything up. I don't know if you can see how the piston is touching the pad. Well, when it's new, it's all the way back, so I was just showing you I pumped it. And guess what? It released. It sounds a little rough because I don't have the bolt that holds the rotor, so the wheel's got to suck it on straight. So now, I get to repeat the process on this side. I want to spin this wheel, and it spins just really hard. So I went and picked up another caliper. I'm not going to boring you guys with repeating, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw this one on. So that's how you change that.